I should not have read this book. You know why? Because now I want a pet panther. I am currently obsessed with 80s dark fantasy, so I'm trying to consume as much of it as possible. Books, movies, games, all of it. And I just finished reading Homeland by R.A. Salvatore, which is the first book in the Dark Elf trilogy. Now, before you start screaming and throwing overpriced eggs at me, you should know that I am aware this was actually published in 1990. But that just means it was written in the 80s, so it still counts. Homeland might as well be called The Life and Times of Dark Elves, because in this book, we are ushered into the Underdark, where we learn the very complex socio-political systems of the Drow. And within this network of families vying for better rank and status, we meet our main character, Drizzt. We are actually introduced to him on the day of his birth when he is meant to be sacrificed. But as fate would have it, young Drizzt gets to live, which means we get to watch him grow up, get stronger, and learn the ways of his people. And the more he learns about his people, the more he realizes he doesn't really see eye to eye with them. First and foremost, the lore and world building on display here is excellent. The city of Menzoberranzan feels like a very real and very dangerous place. Because all the families of the Drow are led by very powerful, very vengeful female characters, the male characters like Drizzt are in constant danger, needing to watch what they say and what they do. And as someone who has been reading a lot of 80s dark fantasy lately, this is a huge breath of fresh air. I cannot tell you how wonderful it was to read a book in this dark fantasy series I'm doing that had really strong female characters. And sure, they're like super evil, but 99% of the characters in this book are pretty nefarious anyway, so it works. Now, I think Drizzt himself is a wonderful character to follow in this story. For one, we get to be introduced to the Drow culture through his eyes slowly as he grows up, which works really well because the Drow culture and this world is pretty complex. But for two, he is a character who is looking at the world around him and seeing the injustices being done in it and wanting to make a change but not feeling powerful enough to do so. And I think especially right now, reading this in 2025, that made his character incredibly relatable. That relatability really lets us, the reader, sink into the Underdark, which sometimes feels vastly different from our own world. Also, Drizzt gets a really cool panther companion to fight with him, and I don't have anything really critical to say about that other than I love it and I want one. Now, my main critique of this book is that yes, it is the first in a trilogy, and that trilogy is the first in a larger series, but I think because of that, this book often reads more like a prequel to a larger story. And in many ways, that's exactly what it is, but there's just a different expectation when you're reading the first book of a series as opposed to the prequel of a series. I guess what I mean to say is that this book doesn't really feel like the start of a story, it feels like it is setting up the start of a story. And I really don't say any of that as a negative on the book, more of a here's where you should set your expectations if you plan to read it for the first time. Other than that, I would also mention that a lot of the book does feel fairly predictable. I mean, Drizzt's mom is named Mother Malice, and you know she's gonna be up to some bad business. But luckily, this story and the writing are good enough that that predictability factor never negated from my enjoyment of the book. Overall, though, I really enjoyed this book a lot. I've already picked up the next book in the series, and I'm excited to continue reading it. I don't know exactly when I'm going to jump into book 2, but let me know if you'd like to see more reviews of the Legend of Drizzt series as I continue reading them. Now, I still have a ton of 80s dark fantasy books to read, movies to watch, and games to play, but the two books I'm thinking about reading next are The Black Company or Star Wars Splinter of the Mind's Eye. So feel free to let me know which one of these you'd be more interested in hearing about first. And of course, if you have other 80s dark fantasy favorites you'd like to see me cover, feel free to let me know those as well.